Hello and welcome everyone again to the Tuesday Night Smite podcast, the show where we will actually talk about Flashpoint for the last time, at least for today. Yeah, today's going to be episode 13, obviously the Relegations review. Relegations happened last weekend, if you hadn't heard about that. And yeah, I'm going to be your host, the Robbie Dog, joined as always by my good partner here, Sabo. Yeah, let's just jump right into the topic. I'd say Relegations, or specifically the EU side. Sabo, tell us what happened, basically.
The main thing to take away from this weekend is that the Poppies and Burrito kept their spots. I don't think it was a surprise to either one of us because we picked them both to hold on last week. I think the most surprising part was that it took 9 games. The tiebreakers were necessary. If you didn't watch it, Victoria's Secret was able to win the first 2 games and force a tiebreaker scenario with the Poppies and Burrito. So
yeah, for a while it looked like they were actually going to get through into the SPL. But obviously going up 2-0 is a pretty good start. You can't get anything better, really. But then they did lose their third match against Burrito, I think it was.
Yeah.
And that led to a 3-way tie at the top between Burrito, Poppies, and Victoria's Secrets. In the end, in this tiebreaker, Victoria's Secret, it's just one secret. Victoria's Secret didn't manage to win a game again against those 2 SPL teams, so they're not going to be in the SPL now, which is kind of sad in its own right. But yeah, I think overall they still did overperform to quite a huge extent, because we were both not really expecting too much out of them, and getting 2 wins against both New Game Plus and against Poppies, especially against Poppies, was fairly impressive.
I mean, neither one of us knew what to expect from most of the team. Frostiak and Mr. Stefan were the only 2 we knew anything about coming into the weekend. So there's that part of the equation, but we also, like, if you look at New Game Plus's roster, which was the other team that did not find a single win, they were favored. They were amongst the challenger team. They were the favorite ones. Murder, Game Hunter, Bashful, Repticos, and Filippo. They were disappointing, but players like Julio, 69, Lance Wolf, and Spudio you were probably right, they did overperform, but we got a good view of what they can do. And we at least have an idea that, we might see some of these players in the SPL further down. Season 5, if some spots open up, all 3 positions are pretty much set in the SPL, but who knows? You could see one of those guys get pulled up in Season 5. Back to New Game Plus, though, it's a disappointing performance overall. The one that disappointed me the most was Murder, the support with the most experience coming into the Relegations. He really just... We'll talk about Incon later and how he played, but these, just comparing him to Incon, they were completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Murder, couldn't do anything right this weekend, from what I could tell.
Yeah, it was very disappointing across the entire team, but Murder is definitely someone that we would have expected a bit more from, even though we never really held him up to be one of the best supports in the EU side, right? Even way back when he was on the Titan roster, that was considered to be, as a roster, one of the best in EU. The other players that we kind of held up to be supposed to carry this team, they didn't do too badly, right? Replicas, I thought, was still a bit disappointing. But Game Hunter, obviously, he got a pentakill. He looked good in pretty much every match they played, even though they were all losses, right? So
Yeah. If I'm walking away from this as an EU SPL team that's looking for maybe a support, or not a support, but an ADC, Game Hunter is the one that stood out to me this weekend because, like you said, he played very well in all the games he played. He was really the only reason this team was competitive this weekend.
yeah, I think that is the one spot, the one bright spot on this New Game Plus roster, really. And yeah, there's not too much else to say, right? I'm not sure if anyone from any of these Challenger Cup rosters is really going to find a home in the SPL going into Season 5, just because we obviously know now that the SPL is going to get smaller, only 6 teams instead of 8. And with that in mind, it's kind of going to be hard to call any of the players that we saw play this week or last weekend one of the best 6 players in their respective roles in EU, right?
Yeah, you make a fairly good point there, but there are 2 players that played really well this weekend that stuck out to me, and that was the duo lane for Victoria's Secret. Lance Wolf and Spudio played. We keep going back to this word, but overperformed. But they played well enough to overperform. And you said it's going down to 6 teams. It could be that with these 2 positions already established amongst the EU powerhouses in the SPL, we could not see them, but certainly they have the talent to make it there.
Yeah, I think they have a ton of potential that they can improve upon. If they manage to do just that, they should have a bright future ahead of themselves, because eventually some of the current players in their roles in EU are going to stop playing or are going to fall off inevitably, and then it will be their shot to actually make it into the SPL. But that still kind of leaves us with the situation where they still have to improve to a certain extent. And that is that is something they'll have to do, but it's definitely possible. Well, they've got a bright. Yeah, go ahead.
Lance Wolf in particular, the first 2 games, the games that they won, he looked to be the best support in relegations this weekend. Over the last 3 games where they couldn't find a win, he looked really questionable, I guess is probably the best word to describe him. 0-4 in the second game against Burrito, where it was on, the SPL spot wasn't on the line, but to extend the tiebreakers to another round, you don't want that to happen. You want to have some sort of presence in that games that really matter.
Yeah, well, what I also thought was a bit of an issue for them was that Frostiak really only had 1 great game, and it was a bit fluky. That game itself. I'm talking about the first game against Poppies, by the way, yeah. where it was really a bit fluky that they even won that one, in my opinion. I'm not saying they're a bad team or anything. I'm just saying, under normal circumstances, I think Poppies win against this roster, Victoria's Secret roster, and that's why they did it in the second one game. Because when we talk about their first game against Poppy specifically, we had a very weird situation where the only real high damage god on the Poppies in that game was I can't think of the name, Warchi on the Ram, and he really struggled because he was just getting dove, or is that the right word? I think so.
Focused.
Yeah, he was getting focused, and he was just getting all in all the time by Frostiak, because Poppies did not manage to keep Frostiak out of fights and to keep him constantly ticked up with some form of damage so that he couldn't just blink in and go full ham on Warchi. And when a Hun Bats jumps on you as a Ram, even if you have beats, it's going to be hard to get away, because if he blinks on you ults, you have to beats, and then what are your options? You can either just roll away, and then you're out of the fight, and they probably turn on the rest of your team and kill them all. You can try to fight, but Hunbats, if he gets crits, which he probably will because it's late game, he's just gonna kill you before you kill him. And even if you jump away, Hunbat still has his leap. He can jump on you, he can slow you, he can crit you, he can kill you. And that was kind of the downfall for puppies in that game, in my opinion.
And you make a good point, but you also got to think in if he blinks in and he gets your beats with his ultimate and doesn't get to kill the first time, the ultimate's only on like a 70-second cooldown. He's going to be back up before your beats are available the second time. So you have to be aware of that, and Warchi should have been aware of that, but he wasn't a couple times, and Frosty had caught him. So yeah. The biggest issue I saw with Victoria's Secret is it was inconsistency throughout the not the tournament or the relegations, but through the team. It'd be Frostiak that first game really performed well, helped the team win. Second game, I believe it was Spudio and Julio that did the carrying in that second game. And then third game, Frostiak falls apart, can't get carried. Second game against the Poppies, it was just they couldn't bring it together at the same time. And when you struggle to do that, it makes it really hard to win these games against these SPL teams.
Yeah, and most specifically, that has always been Frostiak's downfall. That he has always been inconsistent, right? He is a hot or cold jungler, where he is either going to carry you the game or he's pretty much just going to feed. And we saw that this weekend. In the games where he didn't perform, he played really poorly and just got killed all over again, all the time. It was very hard for him to get anything done if he didn't get off to a good start, which in most of the games he didn't. And I think a large portion of the win against Poppies was due to him getting off to a good start and just carrying that momentum and that sort of stuff through till the end of the game. And and I think we can't just fault Warchi for his positioning in that game. I think it also comes down to the rest of the team not really zoning enough as well. Right, because Hunbats shouldn't get to blink in range of your Rama onto your Rama. That should not really be happening. He should be covered by someone else who's standing in front of him and preventing him from even going in the first place. But yeah.
Well, we also got our first look this weekend at Mr. Nazer, the Poppies' new mid. Overall, what are your thoughts about this guy?
I think he also had a poor start to the relegations itself, and due to that, obviously also to the entirety of his tenure in this Poppies roster. Like I said, the first game they played against Victoria's Secret was actually the first. Well, that was the first game they played, the one against Victoria's Secret, and he didn't look too good there on his Janus. It didn't seem like he was enough of a threat to really not allow Frostiak to go in. And over the weekend or over the day, he kind of improved. I thought he looked a lot better. He seemed to have more of an impact going into the later games, and I think he was one of the person that and one of the people that made them win their second game against Victoria's Secret.
Yeah, he definitely settled down the later in the day. That first game probably came down to nerves as much as anything. But as they kept playing and as he got more games underneath him, he kind of settled down and became more of a factor for this team. And like you said, had a good performance in that second game against Victoria's Secret, and was really one of the reasons why they were able to win. He did have, correct me if he played what Yanis that game as well.
I think so. He played a lot of Giannis the weekend overall, and it might have been in that game as well.
And he was able to get, keep Frosty Egg down and not let him go off and do, do his thing and do what he did in that first matchup against them. And that was just the adjustments, and that's kind of adjustments you want to see from pro player as he moves forward and into a tournament or into the league. So he should definitely be an upgrade over Oho Boom. How much of an upgrade? I don't think we have enough evidence from him, gameplay from him, to tell us how big. I definitely see this team being better because he's in the mid. We just don't know, or I'm not wanting to put them in that sixth spot just yet. Because being six is the goal for these lower end teams right now. Because 6 gets you a leg up on making the spring split next season.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I think it's worth pointing out that they even placed behind Burrito in these relegations, right? Because Burrito, I think they went 2-0 in the tiebreaker. Unlike
Burrito's only loss this weekend was to Poppies, right?
Yeah, the Poppies in the first game they played against them. So I guess in the head-to-head they're kind of even, but just looking at the actual finished placement, right? They ended up ahead of Poppies as far as relegations are concerned, because they went overall 4-1, while Poppies only went 3-2. And that is an interesting thing to consider when you look at how much better Poppies look than Burrito overall as far as the split is concerned. Right, it kind of changes my expectations, at least, for how the fall split's going to go in terms of the power level of those two teams specifically, and of how the head-to-head between those two teams might go. Because we've now really seen Burrito take an important game off of Poppies, which is a good news for them, honestly.
Well, there are still some holes on this Burrito team that I'm not 100% sold on. Most notably being, I believe it's Sibby in the solo lane and Death Panther in the mid. I think the other 3 have played well enough that you could make a case for them finishing 6th, but Sibby and Death Panther, I have to see more from them right now, and I like the Poppies. I can't remember the names. Drelo and Creed. I like them better than I do Sibby and Death Panther right now. So there's still a lot of holes, a lot of questions to be answered about both teams, but I think the overall roster favors Poppies more than it does Burrito. So
the reason it concerns me a bit that they did end up losing that game to them in the tiebreakers is that it means to me a bit that they don't as much have to look forward towards the teams ahead of them, like Elevate that we're mostly pointing out, but they also still have to look behind themselves at what Burrito is going to be doing, and at whether Burrito is going to be able to beat them in the regular season and potentially get that gauntlet spot ahead of them. And especially in the gauntlet, then they're going to have to look towards Burrito as well to see whether they can defeat them in the gauntlet, assuming they even meet each other there, and try to get away into super regionals, right?
Well, it should be interesting one way or the other because we are going down to 6 teams. 8 teams are no longer going to be a thing after this last fall split. So that race or that competition at the bottom of the league should be just as interesting as it is at the top of the league because we want to know what's going to happen in season 5, who's going to be playing in season 5. Uh, mentioned Elevate, Poppies, Burrito. We don't know who else is going to be down there. You mentioned something about how far is Ope going to fall. I'm looking more at Enix being there as well, but it's a question that's going to get answered as we play out, and it should be exciting to watch these lower end teams again because of it, because we're going to 6.
Yeah, like those are questions as well. How Enix is going to do and how Obey are going to do with Celia as their new solo laner, and potentially how Energy are going to really integrate Maniac into their system, right? Because if that doesn't work out, they could drop as well, and we could be looking at having a clear top 2 in EU between Dig and Rival, and having the rest of teams sort of lag behind and potentially even drop below a team like Poppies. But that's still a lot of speculation going on there. So I don't think it's too important that we go into it with that much depth right now. Just it's worth considering that, especially the teams that have made roster changes or the teams that haven't looked good in previous splits, could have a potential to fall off as well and to be under threat by the likes of Elevate, the likes of Poppies. So yeah. But yeah, what it's mostly going to come down to, obviously, in this split is going to be the Gauntlet, because the Gauntlet is going to be the last chance for teams to make it to Super Regionals, or, well, the wildcards bracket of Super Regionals, and to try to qualify for Worlds off of that. Oh yeah.
Well, we're going to get a good idea about who's what position each Gauntlet team's going to have as we get further on into the split. We have just finished off relegations. Not all roster changes have been announced yet, but we shouldn't go too far into depth of that, but still I don't think there's an argument to be made about the Poppies or Burritos being in, as of right now, being able to win the Gauntlet and make it into Super Regionals. I feel like they both have a lot to improve on, and this past weekend just proved it. Burrito played better this weekend, yeah, but they were both able to keep their spots, and given the fact that they did so poorly last split, that it's we need to see vast improvement from them. You can't to struggle against a team like Victoria's Secret, who was the number 2 Challenger Cup team coming into the weekend, is not good for either team. They both should have probably won the games that they did play against Victoria's Secret, but as you said, Poppies dropped that first game against them because Frostac was able to get ahead and get it rolling in their favor, and they just couldn't respond to it. And how is that? How are they going to be able to handle fails or QVO or adapting when they go off? If they can't handle somebody as inconsistent as Frostiak, how are they going to be able to handle the other ones when they finally pop off?
Yeah, but you have to realize, inconsistent doesn't mean he's bad every game. It just means that he has good games, and when he has good games, I think someone like Frostiak gets too close to the average level of one of these mid-tier SPL junglers. But yeah, overall, it's obviously going to be more punishing if you make the same mistakes that you made against a team like Victoria's Secret, against an Energy or an Obey, and that's where Poppies could end up coming up a bit short still. It's, I think, where they have a lot of improvement, a lot of room for improvement, and we're gonna have to wait and see whether any improvement really happens in the end. So I think we're gonna come back to how we think they will do closer to the start of the split. And yeah, until then, we'll wait for more roster changes or from whatever else is gonna happen in EU. I don't personally think that there are going to be many more roster changes in EU. If you just look at it, unlike in NA, we have no free agent spot, and we have no open spots right now, I think, which is obviously a big difference to NA. And I think most teams have already made the roster changes that they wanted to make. So yeah.
I'm just thinking about some of the teams we haven't heard anything from so far. Enix being one of them, Elevate being another. I'm not saying they're going to make roster changes, but they haven't announced anything yet. So it's still, there's still a possibility until they come out and say, "Hey, we're sticking together." So it's just something you got to watch for.
Yeah, but as I said, I would be a bit surprised if any team decided to make roster changes this late into the off season and without having any open roster spots, right? Just because it's not like Enix or Elevate are teams where you would say they've looked poorly or they've not been on an uptrend overall. Well, maybe Enix, but overall they've not looked poorly. And I think there's more reasons for them to stick together with the rosters that they currently have than for them to really make any changes going into the fall split. But yeah, it's always a possibility. It's always something you have to consider. I'm sure they're considering it themselves, but I would honestly be surprised if they came to the conclusion that they needed roster changes.
I'd be surprised if Enix makes any roster changes. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a later episode. But this meta that we're going into, with the late game being so prevalent, Funballer really shines in this meta because Freya and Kronos are so late game oriented, and we both know he likes to play those gods in the ADC role.
You know what they should do?
Yeah.
Just bring back Reels.
He's a Rocket League or whatever he's playing now.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Just bring him back. He's a late game hunter. It's his best role. See, it's the obvious solution to every problem. Just bring in Reels and win games.
For almost a year and a half, I thought he was the best hunter in EU. Period.
Yeah. See, just bring him back, please. I mean, it's not going to happen, but it would be nice. But yeah, I think we've really talked about everything concerning the EU relegations that we can talk about.
I think we're fishing for stuff to talk about. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah, like today's going to be a shorter episode just because there's less stuff going on. Right, we haven't had any big roster changes last week, so nothing to talk about in that regard. So yeah, let's just wrap the EU side up, I think. Do you have any point left to make that really needs to be out there?
No, I'm just it's going to be we should have a lot of fun this split.
Yeah, I expect us to.
Because the bottom matters just as much as the top does now.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's just going to be fighting for that 6th spot to try and potentially stay in the SPL going into the next season. But yeah, moving on to the NA side, where two new teams are going to be fighting for that 6th spot, because we saw Gatekeepers, SPL Gatekeepers, and a Mighty Storm actually making it into the SPL. So we have the completely opposite scenario from the EU side, where both SPL teams managed to keep their spots. In that here, both the challenger teams beat them and managed to climb their way up. So yeah, how did that happen, Sabo?
Well, we both expected the Gatekeepers to make it into the league. The Mighty Storm was the surprising one of the weekend. I think it comes for them. It all basically comes to the way Uzi and Plasma played. Ghost played excellent and was able to really show why LG kept him around for so long to be their substitute. But Uzi and Plasma were really the reason they were able to win that first game against AI. Plasma on the Hunbats, we talked about Frostiak on the Hunbats earlier. He had full cooldown. He was blinking ends, getting multiple Fear No Evils off in a matter of minutes and burning beads. And team just followed up brilliantly off of his initiation. And Uzi was that gigantic frontliner that you want in the late game, and they just played really well. And that was one of the reasons why they, for me, were able to win their first game against AI. They did end up losing to Gatekeepers in their second game, and then finally beating out Flashpoint in the final game of the day to secure their spot in the SPL. And I just want to go ahead and thank them right now for putting Flashpoint out of our miseries. We were we were both chewing our fingernails at that point when we thought FB or Flashpoint could actually make it back in the league. So
yeah, that would have been terrifying. But yeah, they're out now. Thank you, Mighty Storm. But yeah, overall the team looked very good. Mighty Storm. Obviously, we thought Veneno was going to be playing mid, which ended up not being the case. It was announced, I think, a day after we had last week's podcast, the rosters for Relegations, and it would be Wolp in the mid lane instead of Veneno. And yeah, I think the entire team looked very good. Obviously, they made it into the SPL. And I think you pointed it out correctly that Plasma and Uzi looked good, and that Ghost looked good as well. And I think Vivian had a decent weekend as well, honestly. Like there's little I can criticize about this Mighty Storm roster.
Because the whole team played well.
Yeah. I think that almost sums it up, that the whole team just looked good, and they were able to find the win against Team AI, which we're going to talk about a bit later on, and against Flashpoint, so against both SPL teams, obviously not against the SPL Gatekeepers, who also looked very good, right?
They lived up to the hype I was building them up on. So I was not surprised by how the Gatekeepers played. It might have surprised some of the other fans around the league. Might even have surprised you. But like, I've been praising this team for almost 2 months now, since we started recording the show, and I'm just glad they didn't make me look like a fool, because I'm so used to looking like a fool. EU wins everything, and I have to eat. I'm finally right about something.
Yeah, well, you've been right about our stuff as well. But yeah, this was a big one. Right, and I said last week, I think I have faith in this team just because it is a pain to be on team, and a pain to be on team always has a sort of more potential than one without him. Just overall, especially if you're looking at a team that consists of new and unknown players, and that's what this Gatekeepers roster largely was, right? We have Data Remember, who's been playing in the challenger circuit for quite some time. We have Moswell, who I think played at least one SPL match. He was in the SPL
Yeah,
at some point.
I believe he did when Elevate was an NA team.
Yeah,
I think it was the
might have been
Elevate.
Yeah, so we had some experience with him as well, but never anything at a high level. And well, we still don't really, but he looked good as well. And yeah, the big star of this roster seems to be Grave. And I guess Payne most specifically has a hand for finding great junglers, right? Just digging. Who was it? Adjust out of finding Adjust out of nowhere, then finding Uriziel and now Grave. Just 3 no-names before they landed on the Pain to Beyond team, and now they might turn into big names because Grave looked very good the entire weekend as well.
Yeah, I've been praising this team since we started recording the show. Grave was the one guy I kept naming over and over again that I was really impressed with, and he kind of showed off this weekend. They only played the 2 games because AI ended up forfeiting their final match against them because it wasn't really anything that was going to affect the standings. But out of the 2 games we saw this weekend, he played Kukola and Jungle both times, got off to a great start in game 1, and then kind of showed his lack of experience against that Flashpoint team, and was I believe started 5-2 and then finished like 7-8 or 7-9 or something. But got overexcited or got full of himself one too many times, and maybe a communication breakdown or something where he would jump into the back line and when the team was trying to disengage and not engage, and he kind of got caught out a couple times. But that's just a lack of experience at a high level. And as he goes on and starts playing actual SPL matches, he should only get better from here. And like I said, he proved why I'm so high on him this weekend.
Yeah, I think the main point worth pointing out is that he is mechanically very sound. Like that's where I see his strongest potential right now, or his strongest what's strongest about him right now. That was hard to say. And I think experience is definitely going to benefit him, and I think with this experience he could have a really bright future ahead of himself, right? Because that's really the only thing I see him lacking right now, and it's good if when you come into the SPL, the thing that you are most good at is the thing that you're least gonna get out of playing SPL over anything else, which is just pure mechanical skill. Experience is the most valuable thing you're gonna get out of playing in the SPL, and he's gonna get that now, and I'm really excited to see where he can go.
And the thing is with this meta being the way it is, and NA being so bunched up, there's not a clear favorite in NA. That he's going to get a lot of late game experience against these junglers like Homie Faye and Bariziel, and just ones with more experience than him, and he should be able to learn a lot from this late game meta that we're going into for the fall split, because we saw multiple games go over 45 minutes and some even to an hour this weekend. So he's going to have plenty of opportunity to learn this split.
Yeah, that's why I'm most excited for is just to see how he does against the SPL teams and the SPL junglers. Because if he can show his teeth a bit there, we might see him just make it big, right? Especially if yeah, go ahead.
I think it benefits him most from being in the NA because the NA junglers are not established as the EU jungler. If this was a guy that was going into the EU SPL with adapting and Cubo and all, and all the junglers that have been established over there, I don't think he makes it a good enough impression to maybe find himself, maybe not with the same team, but on a different team, one of those top 6 teams in Season 5. where he's in NA, where there's not, outside of Homie Faye and Varizio and maybe Sino Shorter and Weekend, there's not too many junglers out there in NA that we can say are top tier junglers, and he has a shot to prove himself to be one of those, and maybe get pulled up if the gatekeepers don't find themselves in the top 6, maybe find a spot on a roster with the top 6 teams next split.
Yeah. Yeah, it's worth pointing out that as far as NA junglers are concerned, right, we obviously had probably the best one that NA has ever had switch to the mid lane at the start of the season in Anitster. And so the jungler pool is a bit small in NA. There are definitely spots open that you can take over if you show yourself to be good enough, and especially if some teams do not manage to reach their goals in this split, we are definitely going to see roster changes from them going into the next season. And I think Grave could be a candidate for the jungle there, especially if he manages to get to LAN and perform at LAN. Like Homie Effie's seat might actually be shaking this time around.
Gatekeeper roster is definitely one to watch in the fall split. I'm not saying they're going to make it to Worlds, but they could make some noise in the NA region.
Yeah.
Maybe make it to Super Regionals as a wild card team, or maybe as a 4th team. They do have that kind of. I think they do have that kind of potential going forward, that they can make a run at or during their gauntlet, or during this fall split, and make it to Super Regionals as a wild card team. So.
Yeah, like NA as a region in its entirety is still in shambles pretty much. So I definitely see a lot more potential for a new team coming into the NASPL than I would for a new team coming into the USPL, because teams in NA, a lot of them just seem shaky, and a lot of them we don't really know the direction that they're going in. Right, we don't know how LG is gonna do with whatever solo laner they end up picking, or with whatever 5th member of the roster they end up picking up. We don't know how United's gonna do with their new mid. We don't know what exactly is gonna happen with a lot of teams in NA, and due to that, I think SPL gatekeepers have a shot at making LAN, whether it be through the gauntlet or whether it be through actually just getting one of the top 4 seats in NA. Like, it's still going to be rough because the good teams in NA are still, I think, quite a lot better than anything we've seen from gatekeepers just yet. But there seems to be potential there for them to make it up quite a lot with how random NA appears to be right now.
I think the biggest Achilles heel for this team is a lot like the Achilles heel for the rest of NA, as far when it comes to these international lands and these matches against EU. This weekend, they let go a lot of objectives that they should have either dropped or won outright. That's kind of the thing that has been plaguing the NA for so long against the EU, is this objective control, and you would hope that Pain Divion-led team would be better at that than they were. They dropped a couple Fire Giants this weekend that they shouldn't have lost. A couple Gold Furies that they continued to fight over long after the other team had showed up. So it was it's a major thing to improve on, and I think NA as a whole needs to improve on their objective control. And to have that be your biggest flaw right now, and have that be the same flaw that's hurting everybody else in the NA, it's not a bad sign as far as a team that wants to compete in the NASPL.
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head right there. I think overall, NA just seems to play a bit more messy than EU does. And I think that's something that I noticed at this weekend was that when you're looking at the NA relegations matches, they seemed a bit more disorganized than the EU ones, and it just seemed like everything was a bit more of a mess. And objectives play a huge part in that, right? If you're really solid playing around the objectives, because you're really solid playing in general as a unit, then you're obviously going to lose less of them than if you are not, and that's kind of what we saw in EU in comparison to what we saw in NA, in my opinion.
We've been seeing it not just this past weekend, but at all throughout the entire year, during the spring Masters Land and during DreamHack this past summer. One of the major reasons why EU was able to establish such a big lead over these NA teams early on was their Gold Fury objective control and being able to build a gold lead off of that. And so it's just something that NA has to improve on as a whole, in my opinion, to really be able to find themselves in competition against these powerhouses in the EU. But we got the one mark of a good Pain Divion team, the enemy Pain Divion team that was so good in the spring of last season was the objective control. And it should improve for SPL gatekeepers as they go along, just because Pain Divion knows, like, we've seen that from him before. He's really good at getting his team to control these objectives. And so maybe this weekend was just like a fluke or something, that maybe it doesn't happen. I don't know. Like I said, I only watched 3 games of the SPL gatekeepers prior to this weekend, so I can't really judge on that. But like, it could be an outlier, that this weekend was an outlier, and that they actually do have great objective control. But then we have to remember, it's not just the gatekeepers that have issues with this objective control. It's the entire NA, and Payne should be able to improve that for his team. Should be able to help his team improve that. And
yeah.
If NA controls these objectives better than they have this past year, I don't want to say 4 NA teams going to Worlds, but we could get one of those wild card spots and end up being 3 from both regions. But the objective control has to get better.
It wouldn't even matter if LA sent 4 teams to Worlds and EU only 2, because it would just end up with both EU teams in the finals anyway.
But it's the objective. It's the wild card spots. You're definitely going to get 2 from EU and 2 from NA. It's 2 wild card spots that are open for grabs. So
yeah, and what I was saying is, even if EU only sends 2 teams, they're probably both going to be in the final anyway.
But that depends on how much objective control NA can really improve on.
Yeah, I was making a joke, please.
I know you're making a joke. I just chose to ignore your joke because
damn it.
I've heard it enough. I've heard enough of it. All right, I'm tired of it. I'm gonna take over.
Please, I have to get at least one dig in at NA in every episode. It's just part of the show.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
So yeah, who didn't get many digs in this weekend? That's a smooth transition, isn't it? Was AI, because they just look terrible.
Yeah, that's another thing. AI was disappointing, and to me, it comes down to the 2 players that were on the team before they announced all the roster changes. Chapo and Xenotronics did not perform at all this weekend to what we thought they might. The other 3, I think, played well enough. But, like, Dino, and Chapo have to. If you're the leaders of this team, you have to actually have good games when it counts, and they just didn't. Zeno on his ROM game, missing almost every shot he took when he went up to his ultimate. Chapo just not finding the right initiations at times. It's a letdown from those two that really hurt the team's chances. Because Team Money, yes, he played Raw that first game against Storm, and yes, he missed a whole lot of ultimates. A shout out to Twitch chat saying Team Money can't hit anything, but I'm not upset if you're missing a Raw ultimate because the Raw ultimate's only like on a 60-second cooldown, and it's such an impactful ultimate that you want to use it as often as you can. Just on the chance that you hit somebody. So
Yeah.
I'm not upset about Team Money missing his ultimates. I think he played that right. He played the Raw the right way because I'm gonna bring up a Wayne Gretzky quote: "Miss 100% of the shots that you don't take."
Yeah,
Because
like
the shot.
my no, go ahead.
Nah, we both can't talk at once, so you go ahead.
Damn it. Yeah, I just think overall he didn't hit enough of them, right? Like it's good if you're using your ult off cooldown to try and hit something, but it seemed like he wasn't hitting something like 90% of his ults. And that is the issue that people had with him, that I had it with him at least. So yeah, like still if you miss 100% of the shots that you do take, you still have an issue.
You miss 100. You miss 100% of shots that you don't take. I'm more willing because the Raw Ultimate is on such a low cooldown. I'm okay with what he did. He did miss quite a bunch, but he did hit some that were impactful and that really really helped the game go as long as it did. But I'm I'm not gonna sit here and say he was the best player on the team, but he didn't do anything wrong that really hurt his team. It was all on Chapo and Zeno for me. Even Walrus, even though he didn't have the weekend we're used to seeing from him, his play was not detrimental to the AI. He was not one of the factors that caused AI to collapse. It was Zeno and Chapo just playing like utter crap to me that was the cause of all this. I mean, even Incon, we said this was Incon's last chance on an SPL team, or I thought it was his last chance on the SPL team. After this weekend and after the way he played Athena both games, but after the way he played this weekend, I'm not so sure that it's going to be his last shot. I think he played well enough this weekend to show that he can still play this game at a high level, even though it's just relegations. He still had some good moments this weekend that shows you that he still has that talent there somewhere in him that he can still play at this level. Back to Team Money, though. This is our first question of Team Money. If you're going to play Raw and you're going to use your snipes to try to create something, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think he just overall didn't manage to create enough for me that it turned out that the Ra was a good pick for him specifically, right? And that is the issue I had with it overall. I think Incon and Walrus were both in a weird position. In a weird position where they were really left alone in the front in the end overall because Sino and T-Money went missing largely. And at that point, it's just hard to play overall as a support, as a frontliner. So yeah.
Well, if we see T Money in the future, I wouldn't. I would want to still want to see more from him, but I wouldn't be opposed to him being as a substitute like he was for Eager, because he did take chances this weekend that I think were necessary for him to take.
Yeah. I think another issue that's worth talking about is a lack of coordination that we really saw out of them. Right, we saw, for example, I think Incon taunting people, and then T-Money just missing his ult because it wasn't ready in time, that kind of stuff, and it just hurt the team overall, right? Because Incon was getting good initiations, especially in their game 1 against Mighty Storm, but the follow-up just wasn't there overall from the rest of the team.
Yeah, that the communication, the synergy was not very high for them. Incon, 100% kill participation in that first game. It's good for support if it's not over a 30-minute game. If it goes over a 30-minute game and your support still has 100% kill participation, that's not good, because that says that all your setup, all your kill potential comes from the support setup. And if you can't create something with him not there, it just shows that the team is not having a good game, or not playing like we expect from an SPL level team. Because I think the kill participation is a little bit overhyped than it probably should be. Like I said, it's good if it's a short game, but the longer the game goes, if somebody has 100% kill participation, especially if you're a support like Incon is, you're not doing enough without him to win the game.
Yeah. I think it's a bit more the opposite way around. I think early game having low kill participation can be excused a bit more, because your individual lanes should be creating kill opportunities by themselves and in combination with the jungler. And I think that's what is 100% kill participation really signifies, is the fact that they didn't find success, and that Chapo specifically didn't find success in his ganks a whole lot. That overall it was really just down to the team fights for AI, and that was down to Incon getting initiations. But it just didn't happen often enough, and the follow-up usually wasn't good enough for them to win games off of that. And that's what really hurt them the most overall. Right, I think you can have something like 90% kill participation if a game goes to 70 minutes, not 70 hours. And you can be good, because at that point in time you will have been team fighting for something like 50 minutes non-stop almost. And there you expect to have high kill participation, because you're just going to be around for almost all of the kills your team's going to get.
And it's just, the later the game goes, you don't want 100% kill participation. 90% kill participation, or even a little bit higher than that, as long as you're not involved in every single kill that your team has. That's especially, maybe I'm communicating this wrong or conveying this wrong, but
not just see the way I see it. If you have 90% kill participation, it's gonna be because early game you're not getting those kills, those couple of kills, and the team fighting phase, in the team fighting phase itself, you will usually have 100% or very close to it. Right? It doesn't even matter if you actually set up the kill, or if you actually did contribute anything to the kill. You just get kill participation from being in the area. And I think that's how you mostly get kill participation in the late game, is because your team just piles in on someone and you are there with them, and you pile in with them as well, and you might get a bit of damage off, and it's going to be enough for an assist, or you get the kill yourself, or you're just in the area zoning someone else away while the rest of your team gets a kill. And I think it's good if you have 100% kill participation in the late game. It's just that your jungler by himself should be able to create kill opportunities without a support there, which, looking at Incon's 100% kill participation, was not the case in their game against the Mighty Storm, and I think it hurt them a lot.
All right, let's flip this around from what I'm saying. Say that, having 100% kill participation in the team fighting phase in the late game, that's what you expect. The early game, I think you make a good point here. The early game, where the kill participation is lower because you're trying to get individual kills that help you push a lead. Like, you're expecting the solo lane to get a kill, or maybe a jungle and a solo lane gank get a kill. And Incon having 100% kill participation as the game goes further along, and says that they didn't do enough in the early game without him to really make a good, have a good shot at winning.
Yeah. And I think that's the main issue that I saw. Just, yeah. Well, let's move on, I think, to one of the teams, because I don't think we're really expecting much out of the AI roster moving forward. I don't think they're going to stick together, or at least most of them aren't. I think Chapo's already announced that he is leaving. So yeah, this roster doesn't really seem like it has a future at all ahead of themselves. So yeah, I'm not sure what there is to talk about them going forward, right?
I mean, Incon has already announced on his Twitter that he's going to continue to play support and look for a team in the SPL. So I think it's a good idea for him, especially to stay in that support role where he is much better than he was in the mid lane. If he continues to get better and plays in the Challenger Cup with a couple teams, he could find himself eventually back in the SPL. So it's not the end for Incon. I don't feel like it's the end for Incon. We haven't seen the last of him. Wouldn't expect that we see a last of Walrus yet either.
Yeah, like I would be surprised. I just don't think they're going to be on a roster of this type, really. I don't think this roster overall has a future. Individual players on it certainly have. Incon, as you mentioned, and Walrus, as you mentioned, they're both. I think they both looked good enough to potentially find a spot in the SPL. Especially Walrus, we've always said that he was probably the type of solo laner that you would want to have on an SPL team. And Incon, he looked good this weekend, and I think that's good enough for him to have a shot at an SPL spot. Sino, I'm not sure if he has one. Chapo probably doesn't, and T-Money probably doesn't, at least not on the starting roster. But in the Challenger Series, they certainly have the potential to do something, I think. So yeah, and I hope they put together a good team for the Challenger Series. Just Incon and Walrus, I think, as a basis of a team could work very well from what we've seen. But they're going to need other players around them. And with that type of roster setup, I think they could find success in this Challenger Cup. So yeah, I think that largely wraps up Team AI, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's move on to our favorite team that we've ever had in the SPL. And that is now no longer going to be in the SPL. It's obviously Flashpoint. And something worth pointing out about Flashpoint, they did win their first game this weekend against AI.
That was their second game. They lost their first game to Storm. No, they lost their first game to the Gatekeep.
No, I mean the first game of this.
Oh, split
since like summer.
Since the fall or since the spring. Yeah.
Yeah, since spring.
Finally broke through. Yeah. Better late than never, I guess.
Well, turns out it was a bit too late. But still.
Like I said, better late. But yeah.
So, yeah.
Neither of us
Go ahead.
Yeah, neither of us expected this team to come out. No, actually, nobody had this team coming out. Even F. Dot on his show said that he didn't expect Flashpoint to really make it out of this relegation. So a lot of people were counting this team off, and that it wasn't going to go anywhere. And it ended up like everybody was predicting. Like they're gone, they're out, the team is out. We can only hope that Flashpoint, the organization, invests back into the league with a different team, because we need the organizations to invest in the pro league, right? So Flashpoint Esports as a whole, we hope the organization recommits to a different team. But the team itself of Tops and Shadow Q and Mexity, they're gone. They're in the Challenger circuit, or at least we assume they're in the Challenger circuit.
Yeah, like as you said, no one was expecting them to stay, and I think we have a clip. I have a Twitch highlight that really, it's the second clip that we've had this season that really sums up Flashpoint to me, how I view them as a team. I'm gonna link it to you.
Did the Man Ray Vulcan Hulk miss again? Are we having the same?
No. It's another one. It's, well, you'll see. I just want to try to show it on the video as well. So yeah.
Everybody, but take a look at that Titan room. It's just minions pouring in non-stop. It's all on Vivian with the Terra and Ozzy, these two tanky characters,
so,
not allowing.
Yeah, you're talking about the ending of the village. Yeah.
Yeah, just to explain, right? Flashpoint end up going out of the SPL by losing their Titan to minions.
What else can be said? That's Flashpoint for you.
That's so that and the Man Ray clip sum up Flashpoint for me. Just, oh god, this team is so.
Well,
I have no words.
Speaking of Man Ray, though, if you're looking at a player that played well enough this weekend on this Flashpoint team to maybe take a look at for the future, it's Man Ray himself. I mean, he did play well this weekend. As far as everybody else on this roster is concerned, he's the one that actually did good, in my opinion. Was actually something to watch this weekend.
Yeah, surprisingly enough, right? Because I didn't consider him to be a great player overall. I thought he looked rather poor overall in the summer split, but he had this one good weekend, and I think it's part of the reason why they were able to win their one game against Team AI. But just overall, the roster was not good enough, wasn't nowhere near good enough. You really only have, well, you used to only have Sops and Shadow Q that were playing somewhat well, and well, it hasn't changed much. Just Man Ray has had this one good weekend.
It shows growth on Man Ray's part. Surprise, surprise! A Mighty Storm, the team that just beat them out, is looking for a mid laner. They, I believe it was Ghost, the day after, or an hour after they had won relegation, said on his Twitter that they had held mid lane tryouts the night before. And
wow,
that probably means Wolf was a fill in and not something permanent. And so, Man Ray could be somebody that's a Mighty Storm looks at.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be so, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think he looked good this weekend, and continued growth is only going to be good for him. So,
Yeah, I think they just don't have many other options available as well, right? If you look at it, there's one, potentially two free agent at two open mid lane spots in NA right now, both on teams that are going to be rated much higher than this Mighty Storm roster. So they're obviously going to be much more appealing to potential free agent mids, and with that in mind, I just have a hard time seeing them getting one of the better free agents, and out of those that are left, Man Ray might just be the best option. Right, that's not to discredit Man Ray, because, well, you said he did play well this weekend. I just don't think he competes with the likes of Baskin and Ninster, MLC Stealth, etc. Just the big names, and overall, it's going to be hard for him, no matter if he lands up on this Mighty Storm roster or not, and it's going to be hard for whoever ends up on this Mighty Storm's roster.
a Mighty Storm lands the best, and Man Ray goes to Heat United.
Oh god, can you imagine how terrible? And then he just ends up carrying everything.
Trolling. I was trolling.
Turns out to be the best mid in NA, Man Ray. Who would have thought?
Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up for the NA or relegations as a whole.
Yeah, just
There's nothing really else to say.
Yeah, just Flashpoint losing game to Minions.
Yeah, that was. Karma is a. I can't say that word.
Oh, you can. We're allowed to swear.
Karma's a bitch.
Yeah, like,
So,
there's not much.
Only Flashpoint can end an SPL run by losing the Minions.
It's just so good. It fits so well. Like if you had asked me in what fashion I would want Flashpoint to drop out of the SPL, this would have probably been it. And that's what we got. So yeah, let's wrap Flashpoint as a topic up and Relegations as a topic up. For good, right? Because, well, it's probably going to be the last we see out of this Flashpoint roster, and it's also going to be the last we see out of Relegations as a thing for at least a season. So yeah, let's move on. What else do you want to discuss, Saber? Because we still have got some time left.
I want to talk about the fall meta. We saw a lot of games this weekend go, like I said, past 45 minutes, some even to the 60, 70-minute mark. We saw a lot of gods we haven't seen in a while. Freya, Humbats, Scotty made, Scotty was the number one pick from a lot of the games this weekend. Heck, we even saw Hell get pretty much first ban the entire weekend. And so, is this, are these long games, or is this what we can expect going further into the fall split?
Yeah, I think it's part of what we can expect. I think just overall, obviously, the changes to towers, to tier 2 towers and phoenixes, increasing their health is going to make games last longer, because it's just going to be harder to push for those later stage structures, and it's going to require more grouping up and more coordinated pushes, and those are going to require more decisive teamfight wins, which aren't going to be any easier to get, really. And due to that, I think we can expect the game to go a bit later, just because, well, as I said, it's going to be harder to knock down those structures and actually scratch the Titan. And it should allow the option for more late game picks, right? We saw Ao Kwang played, I think, was it only one game? I'm not entirely sure.
I think it was 2. I think who was it? Was it Johnny for Burrito who played it, or was it?
I'm not entirely sure. I think we saw him more than once, at least.
Yeah, we know. I know somebody played him in Europe, and then Chapo played him the next day, but really didn't do anything with him. So I know we saw him at least twice.
Yeah, and like that is a sign that I think we're going into the late game meta a bit more, because Ao is largely prominent in the later stages of the game. So I think those are really the first signs of it. We saw a bunch of Scotty, although Scotty is not necessarily a late game hunter. She's just made a bit of a comeback now as well, and yeah, I can at least just in my own terrible games play Artemis again. So that is something. Because Crit is back.
Yeah, that's going to lead to a couple of things, right? That's going to bring back some of these late game hunters like Artemis and X-Ball, and it's also going to bring back, not that he's missed any real time to shine in the meta of any sort, but it's going to bring back Geb just because of his passive. He's going to be a fairly highly fought over support, because crit, only 25% of the crit is going to affect him. So we could see Geb return. Al, Mercury, who uses a lot of crit, or a lot of people use a lot of crit on Mercury. X-Ball, or not X-Ball, but the Monk Humbats we saw. Crit's going to bring back a lot of these characters that we haven't seen a lot of this season. And I think the later the game goes, the more of these characters like X-Ball is going to be picked up. Gibalanque is X-Ball if you don't know the short term of his name.
Yeah, everyone should know that by now. But yeah,
Gibalanque is the epitome of late game hunters, right? First 20 minutes, if he goes 0-4, not a big deal, because the 45-minute mark rolls around, he's going to be 9-4 or 10-4. Like there's a breaking point for Gibalanque and for characters like Artemis and Ao Kwang. When they get to a certain point in the match, if the player is good enough, that character alone is going to start carrying the game by himself. And so that could bring back some of the later game gods that we haven't seen in a while. And I'm really looking forward to it, because we have seen Freya come back recently. We have seen a lot of Chronoses this weekend. These are, and to point out, Kronos was built like a mage at a lot of times this weekend. He wasn't built for his auto attack steroids on his 2 or stuff like that, but he was books of toss and stuff that, items that enhance his mage abilities and not just his magical hunter abilities. But some item changes, changes to the map with tier 2 tires and Phoenixes getting more health. Brit coming back in to play. We're going to see a lot more of these characters we're not used to seeing, and so it's going to be exciting. I'm just my question to you is are these long games going to help the league in general?
I'm not too sure, right? Because I think I think longer games, well, they obviously result in longer days, and I don't think it's really what the league has needed right now, especially for us EU viewers who already have to stay up fairly late to really catch all the matches that we want to watch and that are worth watching. So I'm not sure if it's going to help the league overall, just because, as I said, the days are going to be longer, but it depends on how you look at it, right? From an advertiser point of view, for example, longer games are probably better because you get people to watch more hours, and more hours result in more advertisement being seen, for example. And yeah, that's really the important metric for advertisers are esports hours, which are obviously gonna get more of if games last longer. For us viewers, I do not see the real advantage, right? Especially because if we get into a really late game meta where the early game does become semi-irrelevant, you're sitting in front of your screen looking at large portions of a match that aren't really relevant to the actual outcome itself, which can get boring.
Yeah, I think you're right. The games are going a little bit too long right now. I don't like the snowball meta, the very short 20-25 minute games that we had in the summer and in the spring. But I still believe 45 minutes to an hour to 70 minutes is just way too long. It's got to be somewhere between 35 minutes and 45 minutes. I think that's the perfect time frame. And with all these changes right now, I think it's just going to run it a little bit too late. And it could end up hurting the league as far as viewers go. But the competition, with the changes in the map, the competition should be a lot more exciting. Like the matches should be good up to that point. It should be a lot closer. It shouldn't be 19 minutes in and a team's up 20K and just not ending it because they're not ready to end it, or they're just taking their time because they don't want to throw it, where they're not going to throw it with 20K lead, but getting to the 35-minute mark where the goal difference is only 4 or 5K, and we're reaching that point where gold no longer makes a difference at all because everybody's fully built. I think there has to be a good middle ground to where it was and to where it looks like it's going. And like I said, between 35 and 45 minutes is probably ideal to shoot for.
Yeah, I think the average game time should fall somewhere at like probably around 40 minutes, and then you have games going over and under that. So you're looking at games that are going to last only 25 minutes if someone gets stomped out completely, or even only going to last 20 minutes. But you're also going to be games that are approaching the 1 hour mark. And I don't think we're moving towards that right now, because like we saw at DreamHack how long the games went without the changes being implemented already. And I do not see them going shorter than that. I see them more going longer. I think for the casual community, the change was the right one, right? Pushing them more towards the late game focused, because casual games were ending fairly quickly. But the actual pro games, especially at the top level, I think could take way longer now than they did in the summer split overall, and especially at DreamHack as well. But yeah, whether you like that or not, it's really up to you, like, honestly. And I'm not sure what we can expect from the overall SPL viewership, whether they like long games or whether they dislike them. And that's really what it really comes down to, is that personal preference across the entire viewership. And if they like the longer games more, which, looking at the number of complaints about short matches that we've seen, might be the case, then longer matches could help the league as well.
this long meta, this long game meta that we're predicting that we're going to start seeing, I think works more better next season with only 6 teams than it does right now with 8 teams, and it could be we're reaching the point where for you in EU could be 2-3 o'clock in the morning before the last EU game is wrapped up, and it's not something that I think Hi-Rez wants.
Yeah.
They made the changes for the casual, the casual meta was very snowbally, and that the game could be over before the 10-minute mark, and you can't, they wanted to extend that to where you can fight back into it later if the game does get out of control in the early game. But at the high level play like the SPL, it's like you said, it's going to extend the game to where it's just too long, and I don't see how EU is going to be able to do it and keep their viewers, because that, like I said, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning is when you're looking at the game finally coming to an end.
Yeah, I'm excited for staying up until 8 a.m. to watch Worlds, and then just going to work.
Pull an all-nighter and then going to work. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if the
go 4 or 5 days without sleep. Yeah.
No, but like that's actually gonna be a thing, right? Worlds already goes late anyway because it's in the evening in Atlanta, and that means it's probably starting at around midnight in EU anyway. And if you have a set going like for 5-hour-long games, then you're going to end up at 6 or 7 a.m.
That's why you take the day off from work or the week off from work and go to Atlanta and watch it live.
Yeah. Hey, I might actually do that. Just saying.
I'd like to. It's only like a 4-hour drive from where I live, but it's still, I gotta have the money to go.
Well, I'm pretty sure for me it would be an 8-hour flight. So there's that. Also, it's probably a lot more expensive for me.
Yeah, but you get to sleep on the plane and all that good stuff.
Can you, like, is sleeping on a plane anything like sleeping in a bus or in a like a traveling bus? Just tell me, please.
I don't know. I've never flew before.
Oh. Well, in that case, like if it is anything similar to that, then I am not going to get sleep on that plane.
I don't imagine coach is, but I imagine first class would be easy to sleep in.
Yeah. Hey, if you pay for it, I'm going first class.
Yeah, I'll let you use a rowboat across the Atlantic if you want.
Yeah.
I'll pay for the oars.
Thank you. We should do crowdfunding to get me to Worlds.
Yeah, start a Patreon. Let's get the Tuesday night Smite guys to Worlds.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, I'm in. Let's get some of our viewers to pay our way.
Which viewers?
Maybe all 10 of them.
Yeah.
If we can get like $50 from all 10 people, I'm sure we can. $500 a piece. I'm pretty sure we can make that work. Or
Yeah,
I could make it work. I don't know if you could make it work.
No, that wouldn't be enough.
I could do it. That'll pay a hotel room for 3 nights and a bus ticket down there.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway, we might be going to Worlds, we might not. We'll see. Like, honestly. Is there anything else to talk about the late game meta? Any points you want to make?
No, I mean, we could see like we've already alluded to, we could see these late game gods that we're not used to seeing. I don't think you should expect Aphrodite to make a teacups all of a sudden. I don't think you should make or expect. I'm gonna stop talking because I can't start. Can't stop I've got the hiccups.
Yeah, I heard. It's terrible. Well, I just want to see Artemis. That's really all I care about. Because when watching...
Panda Cat should be happy having Blink Artemis back.
Just get Panda Cat to Worlds and let him play Artemis there.
Get Fun Baller to Worlds and let him play Kronos and Freya all day.
Hey, Emily too. Emily
Fun Baller likes them just as much as Emilito does.
Yeah, but Emilito's better on them, at least on Kronos.
Alright.
I think Freya's more Fun Baller, Scott, but yeah. Kronos is Emilito's. Definitely.
Spoiler alert, when Enix finally does come out with their own esports package on the game, it's going to be Enix Freya. Or not, it can't be Enix Freya anymore. Enix not in the league. It's Valence Squadron.
Yeah, and they're not going to get one. Oh yeah, I called them Enix. Damn it.
Well, I'm still calling Allegiance because they haven't announced a team name yet, so.
Yeah. But it is Valence Squadron. Or short, VAC.
The artist formerly known as Enix. We'll call them that.
I just call them VAC. Yeah. Point being, that's all there is to say about the late game meta that we're expecting to happen.
Reached the point in the recording where we just ramble on about nothing.
Yeah, we already talked about us going to Worlds, which no one even cares about. So, but yeah, like we said it was going to be a short episode, and I think it actually is one. Do you have any shout-outs you want to give before we close it out?
Not this week, no. Shout out to F. Dot though. He did break the no, not break the news, but really fuck it. Never mind. Shout out to F. Dot just the shout out to him.
Yeah, all right. Shout out to F. Dot for some reason. Yeah.
He knows the reason. I'm just not smart enough to communicate.
Well, if you know the reason for why we're giving a shout out to F. Dot, please let me know as well. Just our viewers out there. So yeah, I think with that, that was it from the Tuesday Night Smite podcast for this week. If you did enjoy rambling to us for an hour and a half, then please leave us a like on YouTube, SoundCloud, wherever else. And yeah, you can follow us there, or you can subscribe to us on YouTube to be notified when new episodes come out every Tuesday, obviously, as the name suggests. And we're not entirely sure what we're going to do for next week's episode yet, because I think it's still 2 weeks off until the actual fall split starts. But I'm sure we'll think of something fun. And yeah, follow us on Twitter for an announcement of what we're going to do, which we're probably going to tweet out. Maybe. And yeah, thanks for listening, watching, however you took part in that, or however you decide to consume our podcast. And thank you for being here today with me, Sabo. And with that in mind, and with your hiccups and your coughing here, good night, good Smite.